Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar organized by JetBrains. I'm Paul Everett, Python developer advocate at JetBrains, and I'm hosting alongside my colleague, Python advocate now at JetBrains, lover of all things testing. Am I right? Helen Scott. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. It is super awesome to be here, and I'm really excited for this stream and today's guest. He's a bit of a legend in the Python world, wouldn't you say?
A bit of a legend and a really cool guy. So today's topic on testing is near and dear to your heart, near and dear to my heart, near and dear to all of our hearts. PyTest. Who better to have with us than Brian Okken, host of Python Testing Podcasts, previously known as Testing Code, author of, I'll get there first, I do this before Brian gets here, author of Python Testing with PyTest second edition. I've got the second edition. Co-host of Python Bytes podcast, and one more thing that we'll discuss in a second, and a friend of the PyCharm webinar. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, Brian, do you have your book?
I do. It's a little more beat up than yours, but yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I've been busy using it as a reference while I'm building this course thing, so it's kind of been
which we will get into today. So, Helen, I hear somebody who might be a famous PyTest Python book author might have a companion video series.
Let me see about that. Firstly, I just want to clear something up. My copy of Brian's book is downstairs. That's why they're both showing theirs on screen. So yes, Brian has created and is indeed still creating a course on PyTest. We have a slide that Paul's going to show in a minute that's got all the details that you need on. But I've had the absolute privilege of starting the course early, and I can genuinely say it's like having Brian sat next to you, talking you through and walking you through stuff and saying, it's okay if it doesn't work, try this. So there's lots of added bonus examples that you can try yourself. I'm really enjoying it. So Brian, how's it going?
It's going really well. I just I've recorded, so the book is 16 chapters, and I am trying to follow the book for the course, but I'm adding new stuff in as I see fit and updating. There's been a lot of updates in the last few years, and it's almost making me think maybe I want to do a third edition, but I'm not sure if I'm there yet. But anyway, I've recorded 11 chapters so far. Is that right?
Nice.
12 chapters so far. 11 have been released, but I already recorded the 12th, and I'm getting ready to record the 13th. So we're really getting close. I think by Christmas, the whole thing will be wrapped up and done.
That's fantastic. I'll wait for the link in my inbox.
But I started selling it like right away after I only had a few chapters out, and the feedback has been phenomenal. A lot of people are really loving it. The community edition part, there's a couple tiers for that, and having people be able to jump on a Slack channel and just ask questions has been great, because then people aren't tripped up for a while. If they get stuck, they can ask me. That's good. So
amazing. And that course is the topic for today's webinar. You're going to be showing quite a few things from it, right, Brian?
Yeah, really around Python. I mean, the course is the book was, and now the course is a brain dump of everything I know about PyTest, but trying to be in a way that doesn't overwhelm people. And okay, I filter out the weird, quirky stuff that I know about because I know the inside baseball of PyTest. But the stuff that you need to know to be effective at testing, that's where I really want to get people going with that. And so, but what I really want to show today is how simple it is to get started. There's some complex stuff in the course that we go over that we can't do in this webinar. It's just to be too detailed. But there's some, to get started is really easy, and I want to make sure that people know how easy it is to get started with testing.
Fantastic. Brian, we're going to jump right into it shortly, but first I am going to hand over to Paul to do the housekeeping side of the house. I'm going to hand over to Paul to do the housekeeping, and then we are going to move swiftly on to everything PyTest.
First things first, you might have heard there's a book It looks like this. It's got a link. It's available for purchase at bookstores near you. I've told this story before. I got the first edition, I think, when it was still electronic only, and I read it on the beach in vacation like twice. It's a fantastic book, easy to read, eminently useful. Do yourself a favor, give yourself a Christmas present. And then after that, give yourself something else to do over the holidays. Go through this video course, seeing Brian show these things live. This link we can, Helen and I will try and put these links into the chat in just a little bit. And then Helen, is there a giveaway?
Yes, there absolutely is. So we are giving away 5 copies of Brian's course with community access, which includes private GitHub repo, Slack channel, and Discord server. Brian, correct me if I've got that wrong.
No, that's right.
But perfect. Keep an eye on the PyCharm Twitter account straight after this webinar. There's going to be a question that'll be posted. Brian is going to give you the answer to that question. Of course, we're not going to tell you which question it is in this webinar. And the first 5 people will win this fantastic prize. So again, twitter.com, x.com /PyCharm, and we will post the question straight after this webinar. And the first 5 people to answer the question correctly will win.
And we'll try and do a little reminder of that as we go through. As usual, the first question will always be, is this thing being recorded? This thing is being recorded. It's YouTube. But if you have any questions as you go along, we're looking over. So when you see my eyes go over here, I'm talking to everybody in chat. And Brian is dividing this into 4 segments. At the end of each segment, we'll gather up some questions, talk to Brian, do this Twitter thingy, and then go on to the next segment. So don't wait until the end. The recording will be available on YouTube immediately, but we'll also put it on our blog and all of our channels and stuff like that. All right.
Perfect.
That is it for us for getting ready. Helen?
Yep, on with the show. First up, we're going to talk, Brian is going to talk about simple test functions and files. I quite like simple. That's just me. So, Brian, you're going to start close to the beginning or at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I'd like to really, I guess it's close to the beginning. So I've got my PyCharm screen up, and I've already done some pre-work. So I've got some code in a directory. Let's see what we got. And in my first example, I just want to show really how easy it is. So all I have is I've installed pytest. I think that's all I've got installed. And so pip install pytest, of course. And that's it. I've got it in a virtual environment also because everybody's using virtual environments, right? Of course you are. Pip install pytest. It's already there. That's all you need. And what I want to talk about first is just really how pytest will find your code. So if I want to write some test code, it's going to look for, if I just say pytest, it's going to, there's nothing there yet. There's no test, but it would have found this file, test_point, because pytest will look for anything that starts or ends with test. So test underscore or ending in underscore test. But I just remember it as test underscore because that's the functions also. And then I've got a file. So my file test underscore, it's going to look for functions within that file that start with test underscore 2. So if we just say def test underscore, that's it. We could do anything. And it'll run at that point. So let's rerun pytest. And now we have a working test, and that's really all you have to do to get started. Now the test isn't very useful yet, but we're gonna do, if I do -v. So this is one of the fun things about PyCharm is that I'm using this in the command line just for a little while. Most of the time I run it through PyCharm. Pytest -v will show me the test names, but PyCharm does it automatically. So if I just say run, it just shows me already. It adds the -v for me, which is kind of cool because when I'm running it, and then it also shows this nice directory of tests that were run, and I can rerun it from here, and it's really fun within PyCharm. It's one of the things I love about PyCharm is it's really easy to run PyTest. Enough about PyCharm though. Maybe. Anyway, so I've got my little example is one of the things that I really love people to start with is just there's like a block that people have of like, oh, I gotta test my application. Just let down that block. Take a breath, shake yourself out, and think about like, what do I really want to know about stuff? Not about like what am I supposed to write a test about, but what do I want to know about? And I've got when I started using data classes, they were new to me, and it's kind of fun to say, hey, how do these things work? And so I've got this example data class, and it's just a point with x and y with integers. And one of the things you can do is you can say, hey, just I can just write a little test that says, hey, I want to test access. So first I want to create a point and give it 1 2, and there's my point object. And then I can we can do prints if we want. So print, just to see what this looks like. Another cool feature of print a equals. And then I want to make sure that I can access it, like a dot x and a dot y, so I can access the two things. And then we can just run that. And with the um, and I can see, hey, I can see the output. Hey, the output wasn't there. I forgot how to put those on. Anyway, um, oh, also one of the ways to get if you really want to see the printouts, make pytest fail. So you can just say, instead, you can either make a wrong assert or you can just say something at the bottom like that you'll easily remember to delete, like assert false. And then we'll see the output failed, and we should have seen the output. I'll cut back to that. But one of the cool things also is it just tells you the assert was false, and we can see everything. So let's actually make this more realistic. And instead of saying assert false, I'll just pick a different thing. I want to show you one of the neat things about the failures of PyTest. Um, it will tell. So we ran it, and we know that that's not 3, it's 2. But if we didn't know what was going on, PyTest will tell us directly, hey, 2 is not 3. And it said we expected 3, but because we expected it to be 3, but we actually got 2. And then it tells us directly where. It's the trace back, and that's just really pretty cool, and it exactly shows us what we were trying to do and where the failure was. So and that simplicity is not free. um it's free to us, we just use assert, but behind the scenes pytest is going off and doing some it's actually doing some rewriting of the code within the abstract syntax tree. The AST gets rewritten before it goes. So there's like a whole bunch of helper functions that get replaced. It's really kind of cool behind the scenes stuff and really fast. It doesn't really slow things down. So, um, so that's a easy, simple thing to do. So why would you do this with just this though? I want to show you a few more things. So if I've got a couple more tests, like data class accessing the elements. But I want to play with it more. I haven't learned much about data classes yet. So we'll add, like we can convert. So data classes come with as tuple and as dict also, and those are kind of fun. And why I like these because they make it really easy to write asserts later. So I can say, hey, a data class, convert it to a tuple, and then I can just say, hey, that should be the same as 1 2. And then later on, and then we can do the same thing with a as dict for converting it to a dictionary. But it makes it easy to check things against data classes if you want to. Handwriting data classes aren't that fun. I mean, it's not bad, but if I want to compare a data class to something else, converting it to a tuple is a little easier because I could just assert equals tuple 1 2. So, um, that's really the simplicity that I wanted to cover. Now that I have 3 tests, I can run all 3 of them. I can do each one individually here, or I can just say, "Hey, I wanna run the whole file," and run the whole thing, and I get all passes. Yay. One of the nice things about PyTest I wanna point out is if one of them fails in the middle, it keeps going. So we can fail one and it'll keep going and run all the rest of your tests. That's kind of we expect that about a test framework, but if people aren't familiar with test frameworks right off the bat, that's how that works. That's really kind of all I wanted to say is that simple tests are really simple to write.
Well, if that's the end of the segment, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Okay.
All right, a lot of questions coming in, so I will head over to those. The first one's more of a comment from Mateus. One neglects virtual environments at their peril. I know you talk about this in your podcast all the time, and Python's. In fact, you had on a guest in the past month talking about what's going on with Python packaging and virtual environments and Python's sordid history here, right?
Yeah.
And so for you in writing a book, you've got to explain all this stuff.
I explain as much as people need, really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of filtering.
Sure. Somebody asked, what theme is this? It seems cool. It's just new UI with dark, right?
Yeah, I think it's just dark mode or
New UI. Go watch Helen's videos
Oh,
on new UI.
but one of the cool things about it is you can hide a bunch of stuff. It comes like defaulted with a whole bunch of stuff around it, which is fine. But the things you don't need or you don't want to see, and since I'm recording a lot of videos, the things I don't really want to have on all the videos, I just have them hidden, and I can bring them back later if I want to.
Indeed. I have a video on JetBrains TV about reduce clutter. I even turn off tabs. And it was the highest viewed video because it's controversial. Mateus also pointed out about getting the output. If you click, you had clicked at the top of the test tree. If you clicked on an individual test, PyCharm would have told you the output. Some other people pointed out that pytest-s. Dimitri asks, I think I know the answer, but I'll let you have it. Is there a way or a decorator to name my method, for example, test, so that PyTest doesn't trigger on it?
Say that again?
Dimitri wants a test function to get skipped. Is there a way to name it or put a decorator on it so PyTest will not run that function?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's so can I show a screen again?
Back to the screen, sure.
So, a couple ways. I've got to import PyTest, so we'll do that just so that we have it. Import PyTest. And so I have colleagues that will just rename the test so they get skipped. So if I just say don't or really anything so it doesn't start, and if I run the file, it'll skip that test. But that's weird. Don't do that. So you can name it something else.
It, and it'll be stupidly named, and people will make fun of you.
And then people will be like, "Why are we doing this?" So I recommend just using the skip decorator. So you can just say PyTest. Is it mark skip? I think it's mark skip.
Mark skip, yeah. But you got to import PyTest. Oh no,
And
okay, caught up.
I always want to do a reason. So I always like to add. I don't want to. You can just skip it. That'll work. But you should remind yourself why. So just give it a reason equals something like not now or something, whatever.
Yeah, right.
And then when you run the whole thing again, you can it still shows up. It's just shown up as not run because it's skipped, and you can see why. So
and that's a point that PyCharm's kind of Chrome tells you, hey, there were 2 tests that we skipped.
Yeah, I love that. And then you can hide those too. So oops, ran the debugger. Debugger's so fast that you don't even remember.
Always be debugging.
You can hide those. You can say, oh, I don't want to show the ignored ones, and then it goes away. It's neat.
Yep. Helen, do we have time to keep going on this, or do you need to cover one of your points?
If there's any more questions, we can take them. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next segment.
We will move on to the next segment.
Alrighty then. So on to segment 2. Let's see if I can say this right. Parameterization. Parameterization? That's right. It's not parameterization, it's parameterization. So, Brian, why would you parameterize a test?
Well, you would, I think I've got the wrong example up. Anyway, you would parameterize, wait, just a second.
You're going to try to do it.
You would parameterize to turn one test function into many test cases to test more thoroughly with less work. That's why.
That just rolled off your tongue, Brian.
Yeah. It did. Yeah. Anyway, I want to actually, I'm just gonna grab this other what we did before and pop it into here into my parameterize. Yeah. So let's say I've got these functions that we just did. It's named wrong. I'm not actually testing equality right now. I don't want to do that. But so I've got these 3 functions, right? There's some setup that's happening. You can't see it. Oh, the wrong example. My God. I suck at this. Okay. Go back. I do want to do equality. My apologies for my brain fog this morning. So let's say I wanted to understand equality within data classes. And this is just one of the things that data classes do is you can which to name. Let's do it. Let's get rid of these names. Because I don't want to cover that. So I've got any 2 points that are equal, A and B, and they're equal. I can just write a test that makes sure that works. And that's not very exciting though. And if I have 2 points that are not equal, I can say that they're not equal. That's not a big deal. What if I want more than 1 point that I'm testing? That's where I was trying to get at with this. Is maybe I want like a whole bunch of points. Like just 1 point is not enough. Maybe I want to make sure that like a whole bunch of things are wrong. And this is where I want to say is I've got my getting ready right here for the test. And then there's not really any action. I'm doing the action like right in the middle of the assert. But I want the getting ready at the top and the action in the middle and then the asserts at the bottom. And it's kind of like that. But the data here is this A and B. And if I were to do another test, like another test for equality, I could just say, hey, let's do equality 2. And what if I want to just some different numbers? Like I want to make sure 3 works, 3 and 4, or 3 and 5. Well, then I've got 2 tests, and if I want to do a whole bunch of points, that's just going to be tedious. So the better thing is to do parameterization, and let's see, we have to import pytest, and then we can say parameterize it, and we're just going to pull A and B into a parameters list. So we just say pytest mark parameterize, and we were just chuckling about this because parameterize is Parameterize. There are really 4 legitimate English spellings of parameterize, but there's only one legitimate spelling that PyTest recognizes, and it's this one. So there's no E here, and it's a Z. It's if you're not familiar with but it's really a word that I don't think a lot of people, except for mathematicians, use very much other than anyway. So we say parameterize, and then I have to give it a list of things. So I'm going to say A and B. That's the names that we're going to get. And then we're going to put A and B here, B, because these parameters line up with the parameter list. It can also be, this is how I always do it. I just do a string with the commas, but it can be like this also, A, B, but that's a lot of typing, so you don't have to do that. And then it doesn't matter. It's a iterable with iterables in it. I think, but it doesn't. If I just did two tuples, it'd be confusing. So I always do a bracket for a list, and then each item I put a tuple because then I can keep the brackets in parentheses separated. Anyway, so and then each one of these is gonna be a parameter list or a individual test case. And what do I put in there? I put the values of A and B. So I'll put 1 and 2 for one of the. So that's 1 point. Oh, let's do points. I'm gonna give it point 1, 2, and point 2. It's not very exciting, but it will work. And we can do a whole bunch of these. And we can do 3 and 4. And we have to make sure that we change this too. And we can say, well, because Python's date is sort of the typing system is, it's just hints, right? They're type hints. So we can put floats in there and Python actually doesn't care. 1.0, 2.0. And we're going to hope that these are all equal. And so what's going to happen is PyTest is going to run this. And we get rid of these because we don't need to define A and B anymore. And PyTest is going to run this, and it's going to run each individual one, and it's going to say, hey, for the first run through, we're going to say A is 0.12 and B is 0.12 and run through it like that. And since these are all equal, it's not that exciting, but it is kind of exciting because we have 3 tests. The bad part is I did something that PyTest is slightly confused about. I don't know why it's confused about it, but it is it doesn't know what to call these things. So it just has A1, A0, A1, and A2. It just because anything that's an object, if it's a string or an integer, it automatically prints it out. So we have to tell PyTest how to label these things. And we just say IDs. IDs equals, and we can just pass it anything that takes a thing and returns a string. Well, which is the stir function will take anything and return a string, and that works. So we can just say, hey, let's do it like that. And then we get these, it'll print out the point directly. But do we really want that? So if I take an object and I get a string, maybe I want to turn it into a tuple. We just learned about that, right? So I want to, instead of string, let's give it a lambda function. That's fun. And lambda, given an x, I want to take that x and run. I'm going to turn it into a as tuple, and then what did we for? I want to run as tuple on it, and then I want to turn that into a string. Let's see if that works. Do we get all the parentheses lined up? Yay! Okay, so now I've got my my test cases that are named for exactly what I passed in. So nice. So I kind of jumped through a whole bunch of stuff. So in parameterization, so we took one test function and we turned it into 3 test cases. But we also learned how, and that is covered in one of the chapters of both the book and the course. And then this IDs thing with lambdas and stuff like that, that's more advanced stuff, and that's covered in the advanced section at the end of both the book and the course. Hasn't actually been recorded in the course, but it's under the advanced parameterization. So parameterization is really easy if you don't pass objects in. And if you pass objects in for your parameters, then you have to do the IDs thing. If you're not comfortable with lambdas also, that's okay. You don't have to use them. You can just pass any function in. And so we can just say like, I want a point ID function. And that'll take an X. And actually it'll take a P, right? A point. And it'll return, I want to return this. and then we can pass, and then it's a little cleaner. ID function. I mean, it's a little cleaner, but the cool thing about that is now, if I want to run, if I want to do the same parameterization on my other functions, then I don't have to write that lambda twice. I just add the A and B, and let's change some stuff so that it's not equal. And we'll just leave that as a failure so we can see, oh, I want to, I want to show that. We can do, so that'll fail because those are really equal, right? And we get individual test failures. And that's one of the things I love about PyCharm is I can rerun an individual parameterization, which is great. I can also rerun the failures, just the failed cases, rerun failed, and it just reruns the failed ones. That's so cool. So I'm really glad that got put into the user interface for here. Any questions about parameterization?
We have a lot of questions to cover if you're okay with it, and totally agree with the last point you made. I also clicked the little auto run button and set the delay down to 1 second so that PyTest runs pretty fast and it can keep up with my typing. And so I type and it runs the tests every 1 second. And so
That's a cool
I
idea.
never get too far away from brokenness. Okay, let's go through some things. First, Helen, maybe we should reiterate a point that clever Twitter giveaway contestants might want. The correct answer is what?
I have learned that you would use parameterization to turn one test into many.
Just saying. There might be a question one day you want to answer, and that's the correct answer for it. Okay.
Back to you, Paul.
All right. Brian, today I learned from you that as dict and as tuple trick is pretty cool. I would wind up writing like 5 different lines to test my data classes, test different attributes on it. I could just test it on one line by putting a dict. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, on to the comments. These are some good ones. Christopher asks, do you plan to cover mocking? It's not on the list, but maybe you can just give what I believe Christopher means is good or evil, kind of the Harry Percival PyCon talk that's an evergreen talk. Do you have an opinion in less than 20 seconds how you feel about mocking?
It gives me the willies, but it is very useful in a lot of places. So I would I would, if you feel the need to mock, it might be that your design needs a design for testability evaluation.
Well said. And there was, Harry actually has a good book with somebody else out there about, decoupled architectures and stuff. By the way, Brian,
Cosmic Python.
Yeah, right. It's a great book. Brian's day job is writing embedded software for hardware devices. So he thinks long and hard about things, about these kinds of abstractions. Vadim asks, does your course cover writing tests for tests?
Yes. Yeah, actually. So the part of the end of the book in the booster rocket section, we write a PyTest plugin, and I guess I test that the plugin works, but I don't think I guess I don't test if the tests work.
I believe
That's
you
a good thing.
encourage running tests for mocks or for fixtures. If you've got fixture data and fixtures, that you should write tests for those.
But writing test for test, I think that's a great topic and one that I could probably add in.
In your 4 trillion episodes of your podcast, has that ever come up?
Well, one of the things I think it would be cool to bring on that's a good example. We haven't talked about it, but the PyBites guys, Julian and Bob, their PyBites platform where they're testing people's stuff. They have some courses on tests, and they test the test, and they use hypothesis around that. I think they use hypothesis. No, I don't know. They do a lot of capsis. They test to make sure that
Uh,
things are come out correctly,
Capsis
and
is in your book too.
there's some introspection there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, on to the next one. Vadim, good question. And hypothesis will come up in just a second. Matthias asks, I'm not extremely okay. The parameterize thing with that funky old syntax where you put the name of a variable in a string and then your IDE can't really help you as much anymore, although PyCharm will. That syntax is funky and it's got to be in the tuple unpacking order and stuff like that. Did you have somebody on in the past 6 months on the podcast that talked about what could we do in PyTest 99? And I think this was like reinvent the parameterized syntax.
I talked with Anthony Sotilli about what things about PyTest that we would change if we could change anything.
Right.
And it was a fun episode, but I can't remember if Anthony had some way that he would change it. I know that it is odd for some people, but but it's also it's not just parameterized, it's also just fixtures.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
The way to just discover fixtures, and it's I feel, I mean, I didn't do it, but I feel a little bit bad for the people that write IDEs and stuff like you
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
because I don't know how you would do that, because you figured out how to like look it up. Like A and
Red
B are terrible,
squiggle
but
and yeah.
hey, like right there, it just says, hey, it's a parameter of B. But if we spell this wrong, it'll, like, if we don't give something that's around. So if I just say like X or something like that.
And last question, Anirban asks, is there any way to automate tests using PyTest and Google Earth Engine Python API? Now, you probably don't have an answer for GEE, but you could talk about hypothesis maybe and the ideas about automated testing.
Well, around the good, I don't understand about that testing in the Google Earth Engine, or I guess I got lost
Yeah.
with the thought process there.
Yeah. We'll skip that and I'll go in chat and ask for a little bit of a clarification. Helen, back over to you.
All righty. The next segment that Brian's going to take you through speaks to me because we spend a lot more time reading our code than we do writing our code. So Brian's going to take you through making test functions more readable. And yeah, it's something that I think is super important. And I'm pretty sure Brian agrees there. So over to you, Brian.
Okay. I think this would be, so one of the things that we've got for readability for tests is to keep them structured. A well-structured test is great. And now we've got the example I was trying to do for parameterization. So, brain fog. Anyway, it's really early in the morning here. So let's look at the test access, for instance. If we really thought about how this is, we've got a setup here, and then we've got the assert, but we also call this, what we call it normally in testing is a range. Oh, if I can spell, range, and then act. So there's a act, and our act isn't here. We're not really doing anything. We're just asserting that the access is here. There's not much here, but you can imagine if I had like went off and modified the database or print something or whatever, I'd have like some thing in the middle. But we can look at this arrange part, and often in a lot of tests, the arrange is extensive. So you'll have one little function call for the act part, and then we'll check some stuff. But the getting ready part is like, connecting to a database, filling it with some data. There's a whole bunch of getting ready part. And if that is huge, it kind of takes away from the test that you can't you might not really understand what's going on anymore. It's not very readable. So if we could pull this out, it'd be great. If we, especially if it's the same for a lot of tests like it is here, we just have like a tuple that's or a point that's 0.12. Any point works, right? For this, we got a bunch of things we could just want to act on a point. So we could pull that into a fixture. And this seems like excessive for just this, but it'll demonstrate it. So the way we do fixtures, and fixtures are, they seem like stressful, right? Like it's a new thing. It's not. It's just a function. And we'll just import pytest, and then we'll create a fixture by saying pytest fixture, and that's it. And then we define a function, just a normal function. And right now we want a like, let's say we could either have a um, or a point. Ooh, but like a function with just one character seems a little weird. So I'm going to say a point. Um, and and then it's going to return our point. For our testing. It could be anything. It could do extra work. It could go out to a database. It could, read an API or anything, read a file. And That's one of the fun things about parameterization is I've done a lot of parameterization where I don't know the elements yet. I store the those are generated from some other process that get pumped into a like a CSV file or something, and then we read those and generate parameterizations on the fly. Cool. That's a cool fun trick. But okay, so I've just got one point, and I now I can replace all of these point creations in all of the in everything with when all these tests, all three of these tests so far, with this fixture, but the name's wrong. So we could say right here if I say not there in the test, I give it the name of the fixture. So if I can say a point, and then I have to change all of these. I don't want to. Let's just do that anyway for now. A point. And now we can run that and it'll work because what PyTest does, run, it runs it runs the fixture first. It finds this fixture listed, and then it goes and finds it, and then it calls whatever's there, and then the return value gets put in as the value here. But to demonstrate all of this for the others, I don't want to change the as a point for everybody. So one of the other fun things is you can give it a different name. Let's just call it A. And now I can just use A everywhere here. It would be more readable if we used the fixture name, but this works. And now we can run all of these, and it runs all of them. And let's just do that. Run. And now we can just use move. We moved. Oh, we just still have the point. We overrode it. We want to take those out. No, these are better examples that I should have used. Is the arrange part is in the fixture. The action is as tuple, and the assert is this assert clause. So we've moved uh, act, and we put all the arrange up in the fixture. Neat. But I want to show you something that I really wish I could show you the pop-up for. So I'm gonna put it in a any file. So I've got a any file, my pytest any, and I've added some options. I've added -s so that we can see the output, and I'm gonna also add setup show for now. Oh, we're in simple. What directory are we in? We're in fixtures. Setup show. Okay. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Set not see up, setup show. So the fun thing about setup show is it shows you exactly when your setup and teardown are run. It's really handy for debugging fixtures. So right now, this fixture is being run for every single test. That seems excessive because we're not changing the test. If we were changing the point, if we were modifying the point, we would totally want that. We would want the point to be like set for each one. But we want to, since we're not modifying it at all, we can save time a little bit by just running it once, and we can run it once by saying scope equals module or anything larger. And now when we run it, just run once at the beginning, and then we run all our tests. But each of these tests gets the value that it returns, but then then we do the teardown at the end. But I don't see a teardown, right? It doesn't look like there's a teardown, even though our run thing showed a teardown. There's no doesn't seem like a teardown. But if we need to have a teardown, it's just empty right here. If we wanted a teardown, we would do the like a equals 0.12, and then that's our setup, and then we would yield a, and then at the end you do something in the teardown, like maybe print hi. Let's see what that looks like. So I didn't get my high. Oh, there it is at the end. Just one at the bottom. But now we have a teardown. So there's always a teardown, even if you don't see it. But if you want to actually have a teardown, use yield instead of return. I could go on for hours, but let's stop there.
Yield for the win. I love that's a superpower that not enough people put their time into.
And yield is the reason for the timing of the first edition of the book.
Ah,
I did not want to publish the book until yield was in place, and that was going in place at the time I was writing the book. You used to do teardown in a different way. You had to add finalizers, and it was horrible. So yield for, and the beautiful thing about yield is I can use it if I need to use a in the teardown, uh, like um like for a point it doesn't make sense. But if I had a database, I could say db.close or something like that, or file close or whatever in the teardown, and it's beautiful.
yeah. Okay, that's like scope is another example of a superpower that people don't put enough work into. I loved that segment about refactoring your test to move all the stuff into fixtures. That was a revelation for me in the first book. It lets me walk up to a test, and future me is a lot happier with current me because I spent the extra work to make it easy and obvious what's going on in this test. There's a zen to that, and that's really cool. Okay, on to the questions. We're running low on time, so speed mode on these. Is there a chapter on Django testing? This is teeing you up for something that you're interested in the coming year.
No. And the reason is because I'm just currently writing my first Django application. I've got a SaaS app that I'm building, and I want to get through that first, and then I will have a lot of information about Django. So yeah, I'm not an expert at Django testing yet.
Yep. On the learning journey, Mayur asks a really good, subtle question. When testing applications that are tightly coupled with I/O or business logic, like Flask or something, do you simply do integration testing, or do you unit test with a mock database or something?
If I have a database, I don't like to mock it. I usually just have a small database. So um, most modern databases have the ability to have like an in-memory database or something to make it go fast. You can do an in-memory with just a
Yeah,
limited data
SQLite.
set. So
Yep. Okay. What's your opinion on test classes instead of test functions? Is there any support in PyTest for that?
yeah,
Soapbox time.
I don't hardly ever use classes, but you can. So PyTest will run unit test classes if you already have some written. So that's cool. But you don't need to derive from anything. You could just put some methods in a class if you want to. But I would not derive from it or anything or do class hierarchies. It's just for grouping. So if you have like a big module and you don't want to split that, you want like a few of them to have the same setup and tear down around them, you can do a class so that you can do a fixture that gets set up before these three functions and then torn down
Yeah,
afterwards.
but there are better facilities in PyTest for that. So
Yeah,
really
so
classes are just a namespace. PyCharm will show the grouping for things. And so for people who don't want to make a module.
you can do hierarchies, but don't do test class hierarchies.
Just have really long test function names with the hierarchy built into the function. Okay, last one. What do you believe are the most common misconceptions or pitfalls that QA engineers encounter when writing tests? What are some of the ways to overcome them? This is the art of testing.
Not being a QA engineer, I'm not sure, but I do know that like people jump to the weird case too fast of like,
Ooh.
like what if I put Cyrillic characters in there or, -1, -3 beers, that sort of thing. That's great, but I think doing the happy path case first is good. It I actually as an engineer that gets defect reports all the time, um, it actually kind of drives me crazy when I get defect reports that something weird corner case is failing when the normal workflow doesn't work yet. I mean, let's get the normal workflow working
Sure.
first and then
Yeah.
go for the weird stuff.
So go listen to all the past episodes of Testing Code and Python Testing Podcast, and you'll get up to speed on it. Helen, back to you.
Yep, I'm going to be that person that says we are running out of time, Brian. I'm so sorry. You have one section left, built-in fixtures solve common testing needs. Do you think you could fit it in about 5 minutes?
Oh, I can do it in 3 minutes.
You're on.
Okay.
Timer starting.
Instead of watching me type, I just want to talk through it. So I've got a simple hello world, but it's not that simple because I added argparse so that you can save to a file. Anyway, imagine hello world that you can pass in a -f flag to save to a file. That's what I've got. Okay, if I want to test this, just the normal one, we can use capsys, which is built into PyTest, to be able to say, hey, let's go ahead and run our main function, but I want to read the output. So capsys will capture the output, and we can use read out error, take the output, strip it, and then we can check the output against what we expect. Capsys is great for capturing output. There's a log version for capturing logging. Some really cool fixtures around there. The file stuff, if I have to deal with any files during testing, you don't really want to write to your actual file system, or even if you do, have it be a temporary directory where it deletes it. So there's a temp path fixture, which is great, and it returns a pathlib path object because pathlib is awesome. And we can do things like, oh, give me a hello text, and then I want to pass that in to my main to say, hey, hello world, here's your file. So I've passed a temporary directory or temporary file and write to it, and then I can go ahead and just like afterwards read what my application. This example shows that I've read what if I wrote hello world to a file, make sure that it's there. So I read the text. That's it. But that's not usually what I use it for. I usually like if I'm doing it like uh, a SQLite database, SQL like writes to a file. So we'll throw that in a temporary directory so that it gets deleted afterwards. Cool thing about it is it doesn't get deleted right afterwards. It leaves a few around. So if your tests fail, you can go look at those temporary directories, and that's all configurable for how long you want to keep it around. The final one I wanted to cover was kind of like mocking, and it's monkey patch. PyTest has a built-in mocking thing called monkey patch, and it's not as extensive as unit test mock, which is also built in, but monkey patch is pretty cool. And in this example, so I've got my hello that has what to say, and monkey patch can say, hey, let's change that. We can set the hello attribute of what to say, set it to something else, and then we can check it later. The nice thing about the monkey patch fixture is that it cleans it up afterwards. So after this test, it will go back to what it was before. So, but there's a whole bunch of great built-in fixtures built into PyTest to do some cool things.
And you cover a lot of that in the book, in the course. I found that part really, really useful, reading about like the capsys thing and fixtures that wrap that. Those things are hard to test, and trying to do it yourself. Not to mention the world of PyTest plugins, right? There's a lot of plugins out there that give you some of these things.
Yeah, there's this if you go to pypi.org and search for PyTest dash, you'll get a ton of PyTest plugins. They're not all named that. Like for instance, Hypothesis has a PyTest is a PyTest plugin. It's also a thing by itself, but it comes with plugin capabilities as well. It has fixtures available to it. So yeah, lots of fun.
Okay, I believe we're out of time for questions. Helen, is that right?
You can. I'll give you one question.
Okay, then
gotta
that would
wrap
be
up.
Mateus again. I loved that scope feature. That's true. It's a superpower. Is there an analogous functionality for classes set up under method?
Yeah, there's a class scope. So, yeah.
All right. All
Nice,
right,
easy
easy
one.
enough. That's it for the presentation and the questions part. Helen, are we on the way out?
We are.
Helen's Wi-Fi, I believe, is a little bit flaky. So while she's on her way back,
PyTest, which is fantastic. So, Brian, where should our audience go to learn more about your new course and PyTest in general?
Well, pytest.org is great, but for me and the stuff that I have available, it's pythontest.com. And so pythontest.com is my blog or central place for everything. But there's courses.pythontest.com also. That is where the course is. So it's all under pythontest.com now.
Pythontest.com.
Helen, I'm going to break the rules to ask one more question, but then a secret guest arrived. The question, Brian, does Monkey Patch? I'm breaking the rules because I want to know the answer. Does Monkey Patch have all the features that Unit Test Mock has?
No, it's just got a handful of things. I don't remember the list on top of my head, but you can set attributes, you can delete attributes, you can set environmental variables and delete environmental variables. And there's a couple of other things that I can't remember, but you can't do like mocking has where you can see if it was called, like assert called once or assert called with these arguments. You can't do that with Monkey Patch.
Got it.
So
all right, and here's the special appearance. Oh, nope, not that one. Another one came in. Longtime team lead of PyCharm, former PyCharmer, former JetBrainer, Andrei Vlasovsky, great friend of mine and my wife, great friend of a lot of people in the community. Great to have you popping in here saying hi, and thank you for everything you did for testing over the years, because PyCharm kicks ass at PyTest. Way to go, Andrei.
yeah, thank you, Andrew.
All right, back to you, Helen.
That was lovely and unexpected. So, Brian, what are your top 3 takeaways that you'd really like Python developers to have, either from today, your book, the course, PyTest in general?
Well, top one is to just learn a little bit about PyTest so that you can write tests easily and you're not afraid of it. And don't think about learn it on a toy project. Don't look at don't try to apply it to your project at first. And then when you're looking at your project or whatever you're wanting to test, I would focus, just don't think I've got to test the whole thing. Focus on what parts stress you out. What part would you like? What are the confusing parts that you'd like to make sure there's tests around so that you make sure they don't break? And thinking about that of like, oh, let's come up with a little bit of a strategy. What do we want to test? What do we want? We don't. If we don't test everything, 'cause you can't test everything right away. Of just thinking of a strategy before you get started, so that you're not stressed about the whole thing. That's it. And
perfect. Thank you.
use PyCharm because it's the easiest way to use PyTest.
You used to say it's the GUI for PyTest.
Yeah.
We didn't get to all the questions. We'll do some wrap-up information. First 2 points, though. I'll disagree with Brian on something. He left out the most important thing. Run your tests under the debugger. Always run it under the debugger. It's so fast. And when you want to just stop and poke around and investigate, it's just a little breakpoint away. The debugger is just a hidden gem, especially in a dynamic language like Python.
Yeah, in the book I cover debugging scripts, and I don't do it within the IDE, but for the course I do think I want to try to add a PyCharm debugging section. So
we might, by the way, we'll be announcing soon, we are shipping support for PEP 669 faster debugging. And so debugging will be a wafer thin mint during your testing. Like, no, that's not a good example.
It's wafer thin.
It's wafer thin. Okay, Brian, we're friends, so I'll cheat. What do you got coming up in the podcast pipeline?
Well, one of the things you didn't bring up is a third podcast I work on is Python People. And
sure.
I've got a big backlog of people that I've already recorded, and I just haven't had a chance to get them released. So I've got a bunch of them queued up, and I want to release. The next one is, let me cheat and look, Will Vincent. I've got an interview with him. I'll release. But I would love. So one of the things I love about Python People is it's not about anything technical. It's something that just let's learn about. You can be technical. We can talk about the project you want to talk about, but we can talk about other stuff too. Like I talked with Michael Kennedy about motorcycles, and I talked with Brett Cannon about fountain pens. And it's just sort of a fun way for everybody to get to know each other. Kind of like, like in grade school when you're like, now tell us something about yourself, so that, when you go around, it's like that, but in podcast form.
You let me talk about girls lacrosse coaching. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get back to the slides for some wrap-up information. If you'd like to get more information on PyCharm, please go to our website at jetbrains.com/PyCharm. If you haven't already checked, go look at the PyCharm blog. Lots of stuff going on right about now. And certainly in the next week and a half, I'd really keep an eye on that. Keep up with information about news and events in addition to educational resources such as this webinar. We'd love your feedback on the webinar. If you registered, you will get sent a link to fill in a survey. Fill it in. We actually pay attention to this. So check your email in just a bit. Helen, closing words?
Yep. Other things to keep an eye on, the PyCharm Twitter handle, for the competition, first 5 to answer the question correctly. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's about parameterization or something. So that post will go live straight after this webinar. In fact, it's probably already live. So that's it from us today. Brian, huge thank you for joining us and showing material from your new course. Everybody should absolutely go check it out. Thank you for doing the course. Thank you for being a wonderful member of the community. And I really hope that this webinar and all the other content that you create has got people activated in the joy of testing. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you have a very nice rest of your day.
Thank you.